next interview is with a gathering. We have Bob Dalton Harris, and we have Diane DeBlois. See, I know how to pronounce it. I know how to pronounce those kinds of names. Okay, just briefly tell us something about your background, family, schools, where you grew up, etc. Ladies first.
Well, as you might guess by my name, I'm Canadian, and I would still be in Canada if it weren't for the Boston Book Fair of 1978. Because Rob had a booth in that book fair, and one of my old college friends from McGill University, where I went to school, came to the fair, and he met Rob and kept his card in his wallet. 2 weeks later, in a big blizzard, my car breaks down on my way to a class reunion at McGill, or not at McGill, but at this friend's house. And when he rescues me, he's from out of state, I'm from out of country. The person who's going to fix my car won't take either an out-of-country credit card or an out-of-state check, and we have not enough cash. And he said, but wait a minute, I met a guy who's a bookseller, and he works out of his home, and he doesn't live too far from here. Maybe he can cash a check.
So that's how you met him?
That's how I met him. That's how I got introduced to the book business. I had never even imagined it. I wasn't a collector. I was a teacher at the time. And so that's the book background is 1978 Thanksgiving introduced him and introduced to the whole idea that people collected rare books, that they could have a business doing this. It was great.
Pretty amazing, huh?
Pretty amazing, huh?
Bob, what about yourself? Background, where you grew up, etc.?
Yes, I was born in Salt Lake. Most people who were born in Salt Lake are Mormons. My background is with the Mormon Church. My great ancestor published the Book of Mormon.
Quick, he's not Mormon now.
He's not Mormon now. An event in the book world motivated my request to be excommunicated from that church. The Mark Hoffman case. My father died when I was 10. My mother went back to school, got her own degree. We moved college towns from Bozeman to Corvallis, Oregon. I went through high school there, went to college at Stanford, got a Bachelor of Science in Physics, and then an advanced degree in physics at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. I was married at that time and considered my responsibility of my family to require me to try to negotiate the terrain of the Vietnam War, Cold War. I went through Air Force ROTC, got a commission, deferred my active duty to get my advanced degree at RPI, was called to active duty at Special Weapons Laboratory. My first assignment was to finish my dissertation and to give lectures on how to shoot ICBMs down with lasers. Me and another team of other members of the team of theoretical physicists regarded that as ridiculous. And given the opportunity to take an early out, I resigned my commission from the Air Force. Threw up my profession for my hobby, which had been from youth as a stamp collector, but with a great affinity for old houses and paper and the like, and an opportunity to buy the estate of an antiquarian bookseller, did so. And
who was the bookseller?
Button, Lysander Button, in Waterford, New York. And I had early help from a couple of the book-selling fraternity with whom I formed good relations and was much impressed with, and it seemed like a respectable thing to do. So I learned, and in that process, and given the opportunities of that particular estate, there was a lot of ephemera. I found that my affinities were for the materials which had yet to be cataloged and described and so forth, and sort of moved successively beyond just rare books to a combination of rare books and manuscripts and ephemera, and then finally just ephemera. Was a charter member of the Ephemera Society of Great Britain and was there when the U.S. Society was formed. The transformation of my life from a prospective professional physicist, college professor to a bookseller was not good for my first marriage. I had divorced by the time that I had met Diane, and was delighted in her to find a partner for this.
Yeah, it suits our life,
Yeah, it suits our
down
life.
to the ground.
How long after you guys met during the blizzard did you start up?
Well, the interesting thing is because I had a career that I was very fond of and owned a great house and had a great group of friends, I wasn't in any mood to quickly give that up and join this strange person and his strange occupation. So whenever possible, I would fly down from Quebec and join Rob doing a show. So we did, well, we couldn't have done Boston, obviously, but we did do the New York Fair that year, and we did a couple of the philatelic events. He wanted me to see whether this is something I would actually enjoy doing. And his way of doing it was to sort of not just have me there as an adjunct, but to actually make me take over a portion.
Put her on the line.
Yeah.
That's
And I
good.
loved it.
You loved it.
So I had to re-up my contract in April 1979, and I didn't. And moved down in May. And
Did you become a citizen?
I did. I waited until my mother died.
Oh, okay.
So I became a citizen in September 2001.
Wow.
First group of new citizens to be sworn in Albany after 9/11. It was a very emotional
It
time.
must have been
Yeah,
a scary time for a lot of people. too.
yeah, it was very interesting.
But it's worked out very well for the both of you.
Oh yeah.
So, what are some of the recollections you have of your early years in the trade? Tell me about some of the people who were mentors, some of the people who you asked for advice, some of the people you looked up to, or that kind of transition.
Rocky Gardner. Oh.
Everybody loves Rocky.
Well, Boston Book Fair. You know, we always had the booth right next to Rocky, so we could help out, and so we could listen in on him saying, "This is really terse." Yeah, and with the glasses down on his nose.
Nice, yeah.
So for sure, Rocky and Avis.
Yeah.
Avis particularly for me because, Rocky because it was before I came along. But Avis knowing that by and large, the women in partnerships, they're going to be the ones to take care of the money and the accounts, and she was great. So for sure them. And Rocky died way too soon.
Well, you say that about a lot of people.
Yeah, we do.
A
We
lot of
do,
people
but
in
he...
that trade,
Yeah, I know.
There was another bookseller who's, when I had that first lot of antiquarian books, and I wanted to raise my understanding in the quickest possible fashion, I invited a bookseller to come and visit, and I gave him first pick, but he had to agree to tell me why he was buying each book, how much he was offering, and how much he expected to sell it for.
Yeah.
So to get a sense of the monetary terrain on which that all was to happen. That was a very...
Who was he with?
Ken, not Ken, it was Ken
Sorry.
Rosenberg. The name will come to me.
No,
These senior
sometimes it's a little difficult for us old timers.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all
I think
silverbacks
I-
now.
I think I know who you mean, but I'm not sure his name either. But there have been a lot of great booksellers.
Yeah, it's not a trade that's, it does have its villains and so forth, but I found that trust was really a good leading strategy, and usually is repaid in any of the transactions with our colleagues and our customers as well.
Are you guys internet savvy?
No.
Well, or savvy.
Well, savvy. We decided early on to not do business through the internet. And you know, I was thinking about that because people have been remarking how the internet business has deteriorated. And I was remembering that the first time that I had the really strong impression that this was not going to be the good way to go was when we were visiting down in Austin, visiting Jenkins. And it was in the 80s, and they were so excited because they had just figured out that they could keep electronically the different entries for particular books. And then they'd never have to do them again. They'd get the same book again. They'd just plug in, and I thought, and what fun is that?
To some people, it sounds like
right, and
like
I thought,
progress.
I don't think so.
Yeah, to some people, it's progress.
And so we
To
just
you, it's a pain.
It didn't feel like it.
It didn't feel like what we were really enjoying
So
doing.
you actually do zero business
Zero.
on the internet. All of your business is done through listings, quotations, book
Right.
fairs, etc.
And we've broadened our attachment to the culture of books and ephemera by participating in as authors and editors, and we do a lot of appraising. There's and helping to arrange symposia and programs of various sorts. We appreciate that there's a deep culture of participation, and we try to keep a hand in all of it that we know about.
What part do book fairs play in the total scope of your business?
Well, in the beginning, it was the first real respectable venue to offer the kinds of things that we were drawn to, doing book fairs in Boston, New York, and then on the California coast, alternating between San Francisco and Los Angeles. We sort of preceded the interest in ephemera out there and saw it grow.
Oh, yeah.
And we were able to convince our colleagues, ourselves, and our customers that it was a suitable, complementary collectible. And fine book fairs are at least half of our exposure to the public. You know, we do the Boston Book Fair, we still do the California Book Fairs, and we helped organize the regional book fair in Albany, and have done many of the regional book fairs in Rochester over the years.
So you do the regionals as well as the national.
Fewer all the time. When I met Rob, he was doing 53 shows a year.
Antique shows, flea markets, it was dreadful.
What kind of a life is that?
Not much.
Well, it was,
Much.
you're starting up and still supporting a family and paying a mortgage. I haven't been otherwise employed since that time, 1972, when I did. Actually, subsequent to the Air Force, I had another professional appointment as a physicist. It ended in the same way, my disappointment that it was a profession that, at least for the aspects of it that were accessible to me, largely politicized.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want that.
Because the one question that I need to ask is, how long have you had that beard?
Oh, well, somebody asked that at breakfast today.
Breakfast? Yeah. Well, that's just gross.
Right. Well, there was a little girl who said, "Can I feel your fur?" The answer is since the Air Force. He had a beard before, and
Was it as full as
Before, it was
No.
about as well as I could do at that time.
but he had to shave it off for the Air Force. And
that's
so
required.
as soon as he left the Air Force, so 1970.
It's a long time to have a beard.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's 39-year-old beard.
Now I'm stopped upon the streets and people will say, "How old is your beard?" You know, and my beard is this. It's sort of an unusual
cute.
thing these days.
All these bearded people, huh?
Yeah.
You just have to love them.
Yeah.
I hope so.
You
I hope
just
so.
have to love them. If you were entering the book trade today, would you? And if you did, how would you go about doing it?
I would not enter the book trade because we've pretty much dropped books except for our own interest. I would enter the ephemera trade,
Right, you'd
though,
stay
and that,
with ephemera.
we would stay with ephemera. And, when we did the Rare Books and Manuscripts section of the American Library Association shindig a couple of years ago, when the theme was ephemera. And we were asked to do one of the plenary sessions with Margolis and Moss.
We're
Remember
also
that?
ephemera people.
Yeah, right. So the four of us presented and had a wonderful time. And in the question period, somebody asked, "Why did you drop books in favor of ephemera?" And my answer, just off the top of my head, was dealing in books would seem to me like just dealing in cabbages.
It was the Jenkins model.
That's the Jenkins model.
Yeah.
It's a commodity.
Yeah, that's
And
what it was.
not interested. So I would say, and in fact, I just got a message through the Ephemera Society about a young person who would like to start as an ephemera dealer. And what would I suggest? Should she start doing eBay and so on? And I said, don't start with eBay.
No.
Start with going to the fairs, the most important ephemera fairs. Look at how people are arranging their material. Look at how people are pricing their material. Talk with people. But start talking with people who are drawn to the material, who have collections. Why do they collect? And start thinking in ways in which you can feed their collections, in which you can enhance them. And what are you drawn to? You know, what's going to keep you excited?
Now, this is a little bit one-sided. We do still buy books. We
Well,
still do maintain and develop
sell
our
them,
own
though.
reference library. And yes, indeed, we do buy and sell books in very special areas of
yes.
our. So it would sort of, in another part of the answer to your question would be books that you love.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And books that feed you and that you can represent passionately in the areas that now we are known to represent expertly: communications history, telegraph and postal, and the associated transportation themes. We would buy and sell books, and we do Postmaster General's reports. And,
Yeah, sure.
Well, you know, the GovDocs. We still do GovDocs.
Without government documents, there is no book business. I mean, we all have something to do with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
What do you see as some of the great challenges facing the antiquarian book business as we sort of like move into the future?
Well, for me, the challenge has been to maintain confidence in composers seeming like a dinosaur. Still the kids are all right. We have to trust that they're doing the right thing for their lives, but they're not looking into a world where we stand athwart their gaze so much. Just to be confident that we still have a part to play. And I think we do. I think things are coming and going in the way in which we might feel diminished by the onslaught of technology into our trade. But I think we still have an important contribution, and it has a lot to do with what we know about what's in the books.
Right.
Yeah.
And what we respect for that approach to scholarship. The idea of a progressive accumulation of information, not a Wikipedia kind of progress, but something where you depend upon a lifetime of purpose, vision, dedication to add up to something that can be respectably compiled and transmitted. And I don't see that in the electronic media, although it tries to simulate it.
But I met two men yesterday at the book fair who came to our booth because we had been listed as specialists in the history of communications. And that's what they're interested in. And one of them collects newspapers because he feels, early newspapers, because he feels that was the nugget of the first, obviously, information revolution. The other man deals in electronic communications. That's his business. But he's fascinated with how it connects with the older forms, like books. And one of the things I showed him that really got him interested was a collection of notes passed by Rob's daughter in middle school. She saved them. And you know those notes where you folded them intricately and you passed them when the teacher wasn't looking?
I don't know anything about that.
No.
We
And
intercepted those notes.
it's a collection of 100 of them.
Wow.
And what's the content? It's the same as the text messaging amongst the young kids now, you know.
I text.
And are you saying, what do you really think of my haircut?
That's a Twitter.
Probably
business.
not.
Yeah, right. Well,
That's a tweet.
but it's a tweet, and that's what those folded notes were. So he's
You like that kind of thing?
he did, and so
You like seeing the social motivation that
Yeah.
lies
Yeah.
behind the expression, the human expression in these various forms.
Social motivation is pretty interesting. Talk a little bit about you know, as an ephemera dealer, you probably have an opportunity to buy things almost every place you go.
Yes.
Because almost every place you would go into would have something that they would call ephemera. Whether you call it or not, I don't know. But have you found any really incredible things in some incredibly bad place? You know what I mean? A find in a place where you thought you were never going to find anything.
Well, that's an interesting question.
Something that fell out of the...
Well, this didn't turn out to be something worth a lot of money because I kept it. Oh. But when we were invited to go through the garbage at at a house that was being sold, we found a Victorian corset. And I wear Victorian clothing for various presentations, and I didn't have a Victorian corset, so I thought, great, fabulous. And then Rob, going through different parts of the garbage, had saved different kinds of things, and he saved a little announcement about this particular corset. It was the order form, and it showed me that I was wearing it upside down.
Well, that's good to know.
That's the hourglass figure thing, right?
Yeah.
And I said, wow, look at this. It's the same corset, only hers has lace at the top and mine has lace at the bottom. Oh. So, I mean, that kind of thing, of course.
And we've found some very fine things in the garbage.
Yes, we have.
Dumpster
Actually.
diving?
Oh, absolutely.
Invitations to dumpster diving.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to have an invitation now?
Well-
No, but that's, and you know that's a high-class dumpster.
Yeah.
You do.
Well, for instance, in the Victorian clothing department, we give presentations at Mohonk Mountain House, which is a 140-year-old resort in the Catskills. And we were there at one time looking at some of the books that they were going to be deaccessioning and giving them advice and buying a few. And while we were loading up our car, we noticed, literally, in the dumpster, there were packages of letters, the original docket. And they were kind of grimy. And we said, what's going on here? And they said, oh, that stuff. It was kept in the barn and the rats got at it. It's awful, we're throwing it out. We said, you were throwing it out? But these are docketed files of the hotel. And they said, oh, but they're horrible. Nobody will want them. We said, can we keep them? He said, sure. So we filled our minivan to the roof.
Wow.
Took it home, dumped it out on the front porch, not inside, got rid of the rat shit and so on, and found out that, yes, it was. It was their, what they called room letters. It was all the correspondence with their potential clients from roughly 1880 to 1910. And in there we found George Washington Carver letters and, all sorts of wonderful things.
Sounds like wonderful.
And we forced some of it back on them.
Their collecting policy, they have their own curator and their own archives, which is exemplary, have the materials from their hotel from their day one. We built collections from this unit for their own, gave it back to them, sort of forced this material back upon them. There is another facility at the library in Redlands, which is... and we installed a huge batch of the material with their Redlands collection. And
also sold some.
Well, the selling part was probably essential.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
At one point or another, you have to do that. Tell me a little bit about the reason that you do book fairs and the reasons that you don't do book fairs. I know there are a lot of people who do the major book fairs, but I've always found it interesting to do regional book fairs as well.
Yeah.
Do you find, what is the big difference between the regionals and the so-called major leagues?
Well, for us, and we just finished the Albany Book Fair, with which I mentioned we already have a long affiliation. The Albany Book Fair is a place to buy.
Yeah.
We try to do we often provide special programming, have a special catalog, a special exhibit. It's an opportunity for us to go out of our way to do something pro bono, because it usually isn't going to make us money, not at least immediately. We started our collection of the Cold War memorabilia as a special exhibit at an Albany Book Fair, and we're amazed that no one was interested, so we took that as a sign that should be our our next.
Because nobody was interested.
Yeah, it's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, it is.
So we get to have a much less encumbered relationship. We get to buy at the local book fairs. I just started today. I'm going to go through this entire book fair. We don't get to buy very much, at least in our area. There's not a lot of ephemera to buy. But after a while, I'll be able to tell someone who comes to our booth and wants to know where a copy of such and such is. I'll be able to walk them over and help one of our colleagues.
Well, I think a lot of us do that kind of thing
Yes.
at the book fair.
Yeah.
It's one of our responsibilities to our.
I
To the
think it
culture.
is. I think it is. Too few do it, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there are a lot of things that the change in media with how books are exposed has. There's been a culture of book fair doing that I think either did not mature or at least has lapsed. People no longer, we observe, see that it's in not only your own benefit, but for the benefit of everybody else who's at the fair, to still write those letters and invite those customers and to make that kind of social connection that keeps them coming to the book fairs, not only for whatever you might have for them, but just for the good of all of us.
I think the internet has taken the sting out of the wonder of book fairs. Do you remember the electricity
Oh,
that you
of
used
course.
to feel
Yes.
at a book fair
Oh.
15, 20 years ago?
Yes.
There is not that feeling in recent dates at any book fair.
Right, and that goes for the other areas of collecting that we link with. Stamp shows similarly.
It's the same thing at the stamp shows as well.
Well, when we were setting up 2 days ago, there was a feeding frenzy at the Caliban
At
bookshop.
Caliban's, yeah,
Yeah.
I saw that.
And I think those are booksellers still demonstrating their passion for what
Yeah.
they do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they want, we want to feel that. That's why we do this, because we want to. And we're still there available for those who might want to share that with us. There may be something in the general anesthetic effect of the electronic media. People are no longer have their wonder on their faces. They're not wearing their emotions on their
Yeah,
sleeves
that
so
is
much.
true.
You can't. That may be. Our social practices are different. It may be that there are still these passions to be brought forth, but we don't see them in the open so much.
No, not so much anymore.
No, but this fair particularly, I find, is good for young people coming to see what the things actually look like.
San Francisco's the same way.
And San Francisco's
Yeah,
the same
there
way.
seems to be a lot of curiosity
Yes.
among younger people. But
Yeah.
I find them more visually oriented
Yes.
rather than print oriented.
Yeah.
That's a problem we have in ephemera too. The original group of ephemeras, a lot of them are visual artists of one sort or another, and they were looking at the image, the aesthetic appeal of the image. And while we certainly could participate with them in that, our bent is it's felt
content.
always our contribution for the manuscript material, the manuscript archive, the what's in it, rather than
Yeah.
The archive itself.
Yeah.
Last question before I let you guys go. If a young person comes to you, and I think you partially answered it, and says to you, hey guys, I'd like to be in the trade, what would be the best piece of advice you might want to give them?
we gobble them up.
Yes, we'd say, can you come live with us?
So we have,
You believe in the apprentice system.
Yes, exactly.
No, for sure.
Yeah, we try to capture our friends' children, when they are footloose and they have skills,
It's true.
and we can put them at work.
Yeah.
We have a project that we are 3 young people in the last year would have, whether or not they will ever become booksellers or ephemerists.
They'll see
or
it
whatever,
firsthand
but they will
anyway.
at least have a feeling for it.
But I would say two things, I always tell younger people this. One is to follow your passions, because that goes for every area of your life. And the other one is keep your overhead low.
Well, that's good advice. The overhead parts, especially.
Right, because that's what we've done. And that's critical to our being able to relax in a business where you're always at risk, or your livelihood's always at risk. So those are my two.
Well, thanks very much. It was
Thank
a
you,
great
Michael.
interview.
Thanks,
Enjoyed it.
Michael.